Welcome to the Hunter's Advantage podcast, where a group of budget-minded hunters scour the woods for whitetail bucks and whatever other big game is in season. Tune in each week to hear the hilarious public and private land hunting stories and mistake-filled lessons learned. We believe that every hunt brings us closer to God and that we exist to share the good news. And now, your hosts, Christian Babcock and Jake Gaylord.
So, hey, everybody, welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Today, we're joined by CJ Alexander. For those of you guys that don't know, I don't know how you don't know, but shot one of the biggest typical bucks that I've ever seen, and I think most people that live in North America have too. Potentially, the new Ohio State record. It could be the number one all-time typical, I think, as well, depending on the common base stuff. But CJ, thanks for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
It's been a whirlwind lately. I'm sure for you, there's a ton of stuff going around about the buck. Everybody's got an opinion. How's things been going for you lately? Just since you've shot the buck, did your podcast and magazine tour, and then, all the other stuff started stirring up.
A lot of messages and stuff, mostly positive. I mean, every once in a while, I'll get people comment like poacher or stuff like that. And they'll have a picture of a nighttime picture with their deer. And I'm just like, all right, well, it's a nighttime picture, so you must have poached it. I mean, but I mean, for the most part, a lot of people reaching out saying that the story motivates them to get out there. And honestly, that was my whole part. And even wanting to do any podcasts in the first place was to give the credit to God, because in the end, I got lucky, and I believe it was divine intervention, and to motivate people who may not have like the most money or stuff like that. And let's be honest, this sport's turning into, if you got money, you can go kill these deer, and lack of access and stuff like that. But you also never know, man. If you're sitting on the couch or sitting at home, if you're not out there, you ain't gonna kill nothing.
I can promise you, anytime I hit one with an arrow, it's divine intervention. At least it feels like it. Oh man, so there's been a ton of, I'm sure it's a mixed bag of people supporting you, people wanting to dog on you. Today, we just wanted to walk through a few different things, talk about the story of the buck, some how big buck stories tend to go, and then maybe some of the stuff that you're facing, and then maybe some stuff that you want to clear up. But so just getting into that, I think it'd be good for the audience to just maybe start at the beginning. Like, what is the story of, can you give us a little brief backstory into like how this all happened? I know you got a 3-hour conversation about it, but just for people that maybe haven't listened to other podcasts about it.
Long story short, I've been helping my parents and my grandfather build houses in Tennessee. So I've been back and forth for at least a year. Decided to leave my job to help them because, I mean, the contractor took them for $20,000, and they just weren't able. The bank didn't know that they were going to build 2 houses in the first place, so they only had enough money for one. So to fix costs and stuff, I went up there, and my dad knows how to do everything. I was just a helping hand. So I know I wasn't going to get a lot of time to hunt this year, but I also knew that they know how I am about it, so they were going to be okay with me getting out there a little bit. I started hunting mid-October sometime, just a lot of public land, Fallsville, Tranquility, Caesars Creek, and a lot of people said, I don't have a tree stand. That's not true. I don't have a bow. That's not true. I had a center point amped, but the string snapped on me literally before I even got to sit. Luckily, I have a good enough friend who was like, hey man, like my job don't allow me to hunt during the week. I mean, he goes in at 5, gets off at 5. It's not possible for him. So he's like, anytime you want to use it, he said, just let me know. And how he is anyways, if he doesn't have anything on camera, he's not going to go sit. So he's like, if I ain't got nothing,
smart man,
free reign, But the day I shot him, November 9th, the whole reason I went in there is because I talked to my dad earlier that week. And I said, hey, and he's just like, what's up? And I said, think about going to sit at Chrissy's. And he said, I think you should, because he was already putting that in my head all year. That's the whole reason I even went and got this permission slip signed. My dad's killed his biggest deer out there. The weather, when I was looking at it, it just wasn't good. Super windy. And for where I was going to sit, and to clear this up, people are like, he's never been on this property. This property's been in my sister's family for a long, long time. I've been out there since I was 2-3 years old, walking places I shouldn't have been walking, just being a kid, running around the ponds, running back in those woods. So I know that place. But I was going to sit November 8th, but the wind just didn't line up. So I decided on November 9th. Ended up having my fiance drop me off, and it was to avoid conflict between, it's not my stepmom, but it's her mom. She's my half sister. So same dad, different moms. And that was just for, there's no point to give her problems when it's not like I was going to be hunting it every day or anything like that. So I had my fiance drop me off. I got in probably an hour and a half before daylight, got right up in the corner, didn't see much all day. And when I give these times, these are going to be assumptions. I didn't have my phone on me, so there was no way for me. When I tell you it's 4:00, that's my best guess.
You didn't hit him with the 3-finger trick, right under the sun?
I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but supposedly 2 hands is supposed to be an hour. And I've tested that before, and it's pretty accurate. But
nice.
I've probably seen 4 or 5 deer all day, and probably around 4:30, I seen what I thought was 2 does, but it ended up being a doe and a button buck. And if I'm sitting on the tree line, they're coming from like my 6 o'clock. So they're coming up this tree line, and they come to the edge of this pond in this corner, and they're feeding back and forth, just grazing, just hanging out back there. End up hearing a sound. It's like, what is that? Looked, didn't hear nothing. End up being his grunt. He heard it again, stood up, turned around. There he was. And it was probably, I pinned it. It was about 120 yards is how far away it was. So he starts coming down this tree line. As he's coming down, this doe notices him. She bolts off into the timber, and that's what he was going for. He was on that doe. So he cuts into the woods, gets probably about half the distance, and she ends up bolting back up the pond, and he goes out the same way he just went in and started continuing down that tree line again. About 5 o'clock, he got, if I'm sitting there, he was probably at my 4:30, right before a log, maybe 6, 7 yards, made a horrible shot. He didn't run, but he hunched over, had his tail tucked, and I've gut shot a deer before. I knew I had hit guts, but don't see no blood or anything. No, it's a bad shot. Tried to pull the crossbow back again. Wasn't happening. I had the cocking rope, but the way my harness was on, and I don't have a carabiner on my tree thing. I can't even think of what that would be, but it's what you clip into.
Yeah.
So instead of clipping into it, I just tied Prusik knots in it, like 5 or 6 of them. So there was no way for me to untie it real quick or anything. But I had my bag hanging on my stand, and I reached down to go get the cocking rope, but I could not get it. So I tried to pull it back. I got it to the safety cock, couldn't shoot him again. Watched him walk away. And the last place I seen him was probably around 100 yards away, right on that tree line. But at that time, completely dark. With knowing it was a bad hit, not knowing what he was going to do, I said in my head, I'm going to sit here as long as possible. I've never hunted out of a climber. I knew it was going to be loud getting out, but I figure if the longer I wait, if he goes 200-300 yards off, he's probably not going to go anywhere. If he's not going to hear me, at least. So I get down out of the stand. I do grab the arrow. I walk up, see my fiance, and then she, what took you so long? I said, man, I shot a deer. And she was like, well, is it big? And I started freaking out, saying this is the biggest deer I've ever seen. She was like, kind of blowing me off. Get home, FaceTime my buddy, let him know, show him the arrow. And he said there's hope, just by the way the bolt showed, because most of the time if you got shot a deer, that like sticky membrane through the stomach and the intestines, that's going to wipe off all the blood. But on the fletchings, probably the last 3 inches of the bolt, it had like bright pink blood, almost lung blood is what it looked like. But I knew I didn't hit the lungs. Couldn't sleep that night. I have really bad anxiety, depression, stuff like that. So about 3 a.m, I took one of my Xanaxes, passed out. And Corey was like, no way I'm driving there. Yeah. And Corey lives like 45 minutes to an hour away. So he knows I'm not going to sit in my car for
that's why a lot of people do.
It's nice to get that recognition and stuff, I guess. But man, like, in the end, and this has taught me this, people who are going to praise you just as fast if something comes up are going to hate on you. So I honestly don't think either way. Hindsight 2020, I wish I would have took a video and pictures of him where he died. But I didn't, and we are where we are.
It kind of seems like that's the common theme when it comes to these, record-breaking deer, because we've had Don Higgins on the podcast. We've had Dustin Huff, and both of them has said that, you get scrutinized very, very hard, even if, you do everything to a T. There's always going to be, whether that be a jealous neighbor or people who just have a stick up their butt, basically saying, there's no way in heck this could happen. Because Don Higgins had... Christian, I think you know more about this than I do, but Don has had one confiscated. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think it was the first 200-inch buck he ever shot. It was like a 220 something, and I think someone said that he had poached it, and so they confiscated it from him, and the DNR did in Illinois, and they had it for Don shot it legit. 100%. So, but they did confiscate it, and he did end up getting it back. But it just seems like that's the story. Whether you poach it or you don't, it brings that kind of scrutiny right out of the gate if you shoot something, and especially something to the caliber you're talking about.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's does it suck? I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. Trust me. Would I like a 200-incher? Absolutely. But just with knowing what we know about the way these type of things go, it's you almost need to just kind of like what you said, bring a video camera and just show exactly what all's happening, or else, it's basically kind of like what a lot of people do, where it's guilty until proven innocent.
Do you guys know who Mike Rex is? The guy that scored
the Ohio.
Yeah. When he killed a 200-inch deer, I believe it was 246 or something like that, gross, non-typical. And he actually had been watching that deer for a few years, I believe. When he killed it, he ended up going to the game warden's house before he even started tracking or anything. Took him out there, showed him his stand, showed him where the arrow was. They tracked it together and ended up finding it. And he still had people calling in and saying, he didn't shoot that where he said he shot it. He poached that deer. He did this. And we went out there. We recovered the deer with him. I hate it, but that's just part of it, I guess.
I don't know if you remember the Womack buck. It was a few years ago. It was 2020. Is an 8x8 that got shot in Oklahoma. They thought that deer was going to be the world record typical. It ended up shrinking quite a bit. I think it grossed 201 after the drying, but it's the new Oklahoma archery state record. It's 188 and some change. I I have a buddy, or Gunner's a buddy, and then Taylor Smith, which is Gunner's best friend. They're really good buddies, and they said they heard everything from pen raise to they went and got that deer in a high fence in Kansas and then transported it down and shot it. So, I mean, the possibilities of the stories that people can make up are almost endless when it comes to a big buck. It's like, did you see the Seek 1 deer a few weeks ago where
Kimbo.
Lee Ellis shot that deer in it was Ohio, and somebody in Tennessee was like, this is the actual deer. Like, this is one he actually shot it down in Tennessee. Look, here's a picture of that buck. It was like, what, 5 or 6 years previously that they killed that buck?
I
think that was the one on the railroad.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just went to the house. Have you guys seen the recent post? He actually like compared the racks. It's crazy how similar it is.
I think, CJ, one of the reasons, and I have no idea, like we talked on the phone before this.
Yeah.
It's between you, God, and you said there was one more buddy. I think your buddy Corey.
Yeah.
That would know the truth of what happened in this buck. And I do believe in most instances there's 3 sides to a story, right? Mine, yours, and the truth. And so I don't know exactly what happened with this, but the thing is like when you talk about a guy not stumbling upon, you knew it about the property. You go out there with your crossbow breaks, you borrow another one, you borrow a climber, and to shoot a 240 plus inch buck. That sounds so unbelievable that it's like the only explanation is like, this can't be legit.
Yeah.
There's
I mean,
no way.
but it
ahead.
is Ohio though. So I mean, there's probably a couple of those walking around on every property.
I don't know. Christian gave up after the first day.
Yeah, Gabe took me to Fallsville. I didn't see a damn deer, so Ohio is on my crap list.
It just depends where you're at, man. I think Ohio, and a lot of people would think I'm insane for thinking this. I think Ohio is one of the best whitetail places in the world. I wonder why you think underrated.
That. I agree.
Yeah. That's not the only deer I've ever killed. Like a lot of people, like the hunt our guys, Jeremy and Jared, they're like, he likes hunting, but he's not a hunter like us. I never said that. Did I say I got lucky with this deer? Absolutely. But I've been hunting I'm 28, started when I was 10. So 18 years. I mean, I've had my fair shares of failures. I've hunted in stands for 2 weeks straight, not even seen a deer before. So I've had it rough. I've had to learn how to do this. And I think technology and everything makes it easier. Having people like Don Higgins and stuff like that. I mean, you can pick their brains, take a bunch from everybody, and make it your own.
So I'm sure this is a pretty commonly asked question, but is that property known for those like type of big deer? Because let's say, just bringing up another controversy, like the Mitch Rampala buck, a lot of people were saying that Mitch, because I don't know if you know much about him, but his backstory was, great hunter. He's shot a lot of record book deer, and Traverse City isn't really known for those type of deer, especially those with, a 20-inch spread on the racks. And he shot multiple of those.
Yep.
And kind of bring that back to your spot. Is that property known for those big deer? I know Ohio as a state, obviously holds that, but just your location.
There's been a few deer in Clinton County, like that Kenny Pickard buck, which is it's not my shed, it's Corey's shed. He did some work to get the shed, but it was killed in Clinton County, and I think it was 197 2/8 typical. So I mean, there's been some giants killed around here. The best deer that I know of killed off of that property before me was my dad's 8, and it was probably like 145. And I know my brother-in-law right now, he's running a camera out there, and there's like a 150s with half of his rack broke. I mean, he's a decent buck. I'd say a lot of people would shoot it.
I would.
Well, those and bucks that are like 200-inch plus, I think are such anomalies. Like you can't ever draw any. Like unless you're the Bomars, it seems like they kill one. I don't know if it's off the same property every year. I'm sure they have multiple spots, but it's like those deer are such anomalies. I'm sure Gunner, when he shot his 200 plus, that 8x8, it's like, have you ever seen one like that before? It's like, hell no. Been hunting for 20 years. I've never seen one like that before. Like they're such oddities. And even in places like Ohio, so I was in Ohio last week for a few days after the ATA show, and similar to what you guys were talking about, we drove around Fallsville. Me and Gabe drove all around Southwest Ohio.
Yep.
It amazed me how rural it got without ever leaving like a large population. Like it seems like you could get into a rural area and there'd still be a cul-de-sac of 20 houses. It's like,
Yep.
why are these people bunched up like this? And it's like you can never get away with folks, which kind of adds another element to like the unbelievability of it. It's like these properties are so small and segmented. It's like, how can a buck like this live in a place like that and go under the radar in any sense of the word?
Yep. I agree. I mean,
it's odd.
Yeah. I mean, as far as we know, there's one trail camera picture of the deer, and it just says power line, which it's a video. People are screenshotting it a lot. And it does say power line edge, which there's a power line like 3/4 of a mile from my sister's house, but no one knows where this photo or video has originated from.
No one's came out about it?
And that's the only trail camera picture that's surfaced up until like the date you've harvested it.
Yep.
That's wild.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's rumors that there's pictures of it on the DA's property the night before or the day of, but let's make this make sense. If I shot it November 9th, recovered it the 10th, me and the ODNR officer went out there November 15th, 16th, why would it take them till December 22nd to take the deer? Wouldn't happen. There's no way. Within 2 days, when that ODNR officer knowing who these people are, it would get out. They'd be like, yeah, no way.
Especially
know for a fact.
So what was the process of you shoot the buck, you say you recover it the next day, you get the pictures of it. What was the process like when the Ohio DNR guy came out and checked it out? Did you reach out to him? Did he reach out to you? How does that stuff work?
Okay, so Mike Rex, because he knows my family's background, I have a brother who's a detective in Highland County. My dad was a detective there for a long time. And he said it's just better to go ahead and tell them and squish it because we know there's going to be rumors. We know stuff's going to come up. So let's make the initiative. So he reached out. They looked at my profile on the like check-in website or app or whatever, which is my mom's number because I change numbers like crazy. She's like, I'll give you his number. Gave him my number. He called me. I called him literally as soon as I woke up. He came over. Was like, well, what are you doing today? And I said, Mike Rex is coming over to green score. He said, what time? And I was like, honestly, I don't know, 2 or 3. And at this time it was probably 12:30. And he said, do you care to run out there? And I was like, nope, don't care at all. So I got my car. We drove out there, showed him the tree, showed him the path it walked, went over to where we found him dead. He looked for blood, couldn't find it, but there was a spot probably that big still. And it hadn't rained or anything like that, but I said, what's that? And I stuck my finger in it, and he's like, it's blood. And I was like, yeah. I said, that's where he died, so that makes sense. Didn't take no samples, didn't take no pictures.
That's what I was about to ask. If he was coming out for like, just to see, and you would think that, especially from Ohio, a DNR officer would kind of get ahead of the game and kind of know how this type of stuff works. Yeah. Because if two gurus that have a podcast kind of understand this, you would think a DNR officer would understand this and like try to get ahead of the game, take pictures and try to cover, all these allegations that he would know would get flooded to that office.
He didn't even want to go look at the carcass because the carcass, after I got about a third of the meat off the deer. And after I caped him and everything like that, got the meat off that I took, I drug him out to the tree line just to have him there just for security purposes, basically. Mm-hmm. And I said, the carcass is right there. Do you want to go look at it? And he's like, we don't have to. And I was like, I mean, I figured you would want to. He's like, we go and check it out, I guess. So I was like, there's the entrance, pulled up its leg. I was like, there's where it exited. And he was just like, okay. I said, I can move this around if you want me to. He's like, no. I was like, you want to go in the barn where it was hung up? And he's like, no, I got everything I need. He said, I'm going to talk to your sister's mom because she was kind of shitty when we first got there. But he stayed, talked to her, and then didn't hear from him again.
If you were catching somebody poaching or you thought suspected of somebody poaching, I've heard people say, well, you wouldn't want to show your hand. You wouldn't want to let the guy that allegedly poached the buck know that you're kind of onto him. But from my perspective, not taking a sample or not taking any pictures or just having a mind share, like just my dad was a chief of police, and if I can imagine if he's like, hey, I just went to a murder scene, would you take any pictures?
Yeah.
Did you get any samples?
No.
It just, to me, that doesn't. I could see it from the perspective if there was they didn't think about it in the moment, and then afterwards, once they confiscated and stuff, it's like, now we need to start building up a case for this. But it just seems like a buck of that caliber, they know, hey, this is a potential world record. This is potential #1 typical of all time. It just seems like there'd be a little bit more of a proactive approach.
See, that's what kind of gets me too.
Yeah.
But this might be a little off topic, and I'm not trying to railroad that thought, Christian. But did you have any locks? Did you just absolutely wrap that barn in chains while it was hanging there, or what? Are you just like, okay, if it comes up missing, it comes up missing?
No, I stayed there and I caped him out and cut all the meat off literally that night before I went to the house. So he didn't even get to hang in there. I had his head and stuff, and I didn't. Last year, my 8-point I killed, because it's a deer head, I set it on my porch and had ice on it, and he was like 150s, so a respectable deer for sure. But
yeah,
I told my fiance, I was like, look, this deer's going in the house. She's like, well, where are you gonna put it? So I set it in our boys' room. Had him on ice in our boys' room in our house.
I wouldn't let that thing leave my sight because I mean, it was a few years back, but I shot my biggest buck at the time, and I mean, to your standards, might not be that big, but it ended up scoring like 162, and like even to like leave my tree stand and go back to the truck and wait for everybody else to get done with their sit before we went and drug it out. I like literally wrapped it around this tree, the base of my tree, just in case like there was a bear, coyote, whatever. Oh, it was not coming off. If that thing happened to spark life again, I could guarantee it. But I couldn't imagine like a 240-inch deer just hanging somewhere and like me not watching it.
Yeah, he pretty much went everywhere I went in the house, especially after I got him caged out the rest of the way the next night and had him skull capped.
So who ends up skull capping the deer for you, and where do you go from there? I know within, it seems like a couple weeks you had it scored maybe a couple different times. Like what's the process? You shoot this buck, and then where does it go from there as far as scoring and all the media stuff that comes with that?
November 11th, I ended up taking it out to Hillsboro to my taxidermist and had him finish caping it out and skull cap it. Ed Waite, I reached out to him. A lot of people were telling me to go to Toby, and Toby did end up calling me. And he was like, look, it doesn't matter who scores it. Like, as long as it gets scored, I don't think it'll be no hard feelings one way or another. And I gave Ed my word that I'd let him score it. He was going to be closer to me, so took it up there it was around Dayton. So I got it BTR'd there, I think, like November 18th or so, I would say. Mike Rex came over like the 15th. But honestly, the first week, it didn't really have that much attention. I posted it to my Instagram, and I bet you it was November 20th before it had more than 40 likes.
I'd send it to 40 people personally if I saw somebody shoot that.
My buddy from Tennessee posted it on a Tennessee deer hunter page because he's like, man, let me post that. And I was like, why? And he's like, I just want to shit on him. I was like, go ahead, man. Go ahead. He's like, all right. So he posted it, and people were reaching out to him. Clifford Neems from North American Whitetail was messaging him. I was like, dude, I doubt that's even real. He's like, nah, I think he's real. I Googled him and everything. So after that, I told Carissa, I was like, you can go ahead and post it to your Facebook. Trophy Bucks of Ohio ended up reaching out. They posted it, and after that, it just took off a million miles an hour. I mean, 30 messages a day from people like wanting to come see it. Some antler collectors wanting to buy it. Stuff like that.
Did you know at the time like what exactly you had? Or I guess when after you shot it, did you like realize like, oh, I actually have something like really crazy here?
I knew when I seen him dead in between those ponds.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was something special. I didn't know how special at the time. I'm the one who scored it originally. I scored it, I think, November 13th. And I was like, I'll probably be a little off, but I know the scoring system enough to where I could get in the ballpark. I got him at 231 and 6/8 gross, and then I had him at 207 and 6/8
small
net. Yeah. And
What
then
was the net again?
the net was 207 and 6/8. That's what I had it at.
Yeah.
And after I seen that, I was like, oh wow, that's third in the world. Like, I know that's a big deal. And my mom started reaching out to people, and that's how Mike Rex ended up getting a hold of me, because he got a hold of her, and he was like, what is score? And she told him, and he's like, who scored it? And she's like, my son. And he was just kind of like, you got a picture of this deer? And she was like, yeah. So she sent the picture to him, and he was like, yeah, I want to see this deer. So he kind of reached out, and he wanted to come over to the house and score it. He ended up getting it 235, 7/8 gross, and then 206 and 7/8 net typical. So I was off by an inch. I was an inch bigger on my net, and I was 4 inches short on my gross somehow.
Did somebody else score it differently than that?
BTR, Ed Waite, he got it at 244, I think, and 6/8, and that's total inches with spread. So I think there was some points on there because it was going to be scored typical that Mike didn't add to the gross, but would be deducted.
Okay, so Mike scored it as a typical, so there's maybe a sticker or a kicker here that he's not going to add to that like overall gross score.
Yes, because what he said from what he's seen, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Ohio like top 3 or anything like that. One's tied with Brad Germain, and I can't think of the dude's first name. Contras. It's the Contras buck, but it's got a common base. And Mike said the common base on the Contras buck is, the way he sees it, more non-typical than what mine was, because you could see plain as day on the inside and follow the grain to where it goes to that main beam. Where it got weird was when you got on the backside, it looked like it went into that G2. But the way they sat on the antler, they weren't directly in line. It was almost like the G3 was more right there on the main beam, and the G2 was more pushed back on the outer outside. So I just think it was how thick he was, and Paul made it made it not look as typical as what it should have.
Wouldn't that almost help you though? Like try to make that its own tine where it doesn't share that common base?
Yeah. But see, and that's what Mike was saying. He said there's 2 different kinds of common base. There's common base where it would make it a kicker, and there's
kind of like the Johnny King buck.
Yes, and then there's common base that would be scored typical. I don't know why they have that, but
yeah,
I'm not sure.
Sounds like just a whole bunch of hoops you kind of got to jump through, to be honest.
Absolutely. It's all subjective to the person who's scoring it. I mean, Mike could say it's typical all day, go get a panel scored, and argue, this is why I scored it typical, this is why I got this is why I got that. But if the other people don't see it that way, then they don't see it that way.
It looks typical to me.
Yeah, if you take, they do a thing, because they're supposed to mirror each other, basically. Exactly. And it doesn't look like he does, but if you
because that like split or whatever. Yeah.
But if you take a tape to his right side G1, his brow tine to his right side G2, it's like 6.5 inches. Left side, 6.5 inches. To the G3, it's 9.5 on both sides. So it's exactly identical.
Yeah.
It mirrors each other exactly. It just doesn't appear that way.
The Hunter's Advantage podcast is powered by Out on a Limb Manufacturing. Out on a Limb is a family-owned company based right here in Oklahoma that makes tree stands, saddle platforms, climbing sticks, and so much more.
Christian, I have a quick question.
What's that?
What bites down harder, a hippo or an alligator?
No idea.
It's a trick question. The Ridge Runner 2.0 bites harder than both of them. But all jokes aside, we use these products all across the land on public or private. These help us get into any tree we want and hunt where the deer actually are.
Most men go to the grocery store for their meat, but these products help you go to God's grocery store. I have used the Out on a Limb Ridge Runner 2.0 and the Shakar sticks for the last few years hunting public land bucks, and I've actually shot several bucks out of this setup. If you want to support the podcast and get some Out on a Limb equipment, make sure to go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 for 10% off at checkout. Once again, if you want to support the podcast, go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 at checkout for 10% off. Now let's get back to the podcast. The record bucks are really interesting, and it seems like in 2023, 2024, they're not meant to be broken. It's like, I do not think that people want anything to be broken. I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't think if I was talking with Jake earlier, like if I use the example, I'll just say I'm Analogics and I've got I got Milo Hansen's buck. I'm only saying Analogic because the ATH show, they had some giants in their booth. So I'm just using that as an example. Let's say I had the Milo Hansen buck and I paid $20,000 a year for the rights to that deer. And it's like, okay, now I'm still paying $20K a year for the next 5 years. And I have the number 2 buck, which is about 300% less interesting now because there's a bigger one. It's like, I wonder how that stuff is affected in panel scoring and scoring in general. And I have a relationship with this person, so I'm going to score the buck and I'm going to score it a little bit differently.
Basically a money grab.
Yeah, I know.
That's kind of what it is. And just to like add another little spin to that, like obviously again, I want to bring up Mitch Rampala, but it's pretty common knowledge that he signed an agreement with Milo Hansen, stating that, Milo's buck is the biggest just because it was hurting the influx of money that was going to those sorts of people. But what would make it a big, I don't want to really cuss, but what would make it a big kind of shit show is if, let's say a new buck did take that number 1 spot, does that void the agreement with Rampala and Hansen, where now Rampala can actually, after all these years, maybe even enter in his buck that he basically signed away his rights to? Because I'm pretty sure it only like exclusively says, which again, this is all just
it's not legal advice.
right. It's what's the word for it? It's not accurate. Speculating. Thank you. It's all speculation, but I mean, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but that could open up just a whole nother can of worms where, now the panels and all this stuff have just an absolute load of work to do.
Yeah, I know for a fact, just from some people that I've talked to in the industry, Huff, for example, they didn't want his buck to be what it was. Like, they had to fly the VP of Boone and Crockett to score that deer because there were talks, people saying that it wasn't going to beat the Jordan buck because they didn't want it to, and this and that. And dude, that's not right. If you're going to be, Boone and Crockett is the pinnacle. That's what we all like see. Absolutely. Like, that's the gold standard. That's the Olympics. If you're on that, you're gold medaling. But if there's bias and politics in it, should they really be the gold standard? And that's the whole reason.
What's the point in that? Because like then I mean, I understand why it was founded. It was for the health of that resource, which happened to be whitetail, mule deer, and all that stuff. Figure out whether the animal species is doing well, and let's say they have a better scoring system, or they score better and do all this stuff better in this region. What can this region do to try to mimic this one over here, where you get the higher scoring deer, which lead to more healthy deer? I understand why it's put in place, but it's almost like, what are you doing if that is the case where they don't want records to be broken? It's like, okay, so you don't want new growth to be, basically figured out in this industry.
Yep. It makes no sense to me, and that's the whole reason I honestly got to the point about 10 days before they confiscated the deer. I wasn't even going to get him scored, not even from Ohio Big Buck, because don't get me wrong, the state record would be cool. Being 3rd all time in the world
absolutely
would be cool, but those records are meant to be broken, man. That's not a forever thing. And I didn't want the deer, say I get them scored by Boone and Crockett and Ohio Big Buck, and they're like, this is common base. This is really just 178-inch typical. I'm telling you right now, I've seen that deer next to the General, which is the biggest typical sheds ever. And that deer competed with it. So I didn't want him to get a bad run at things, knowing like this is how the scoring system works. And then it's kind of like pushed under the rug. I just didn't think that deer's legacy deserved that. So I got to the point where I was like, I'm not even going to get him scored. I'm going to go to ATA. I'm going to go to expos, enjoy it, give the glory to God. That's where it belongs, and just meet people, man.
Well, it's about the deer. Like, it's not about the guy's ego that's getting shattered or, whatever's happening. It's about the deer at the end of the day.
Yep.
What that deer grew, what specimen it is. And when you make it political, which I'm not necessarily saying that it is, but gosh, it seems like everything in this world is political. When you make it that way, it kind of takes away, like, you're trying to take away the legitimacy of what a deer grew. And it's like, The deer didn't choose that. Like
Yeah.
it just is what it is, right?
Completely. Man, not only that, I just don't think. I don't know. It's so much more about just the score. There's some deer that are built for scoring, and there's some deer that aren't. I've seen deer that are 210 inches, but if you set it beside that deer, you wouldn't even guess. You'd be like, that's a 170s, and that's a 200. It's just the frame of him. And that was more his claim to fame. I'm telling you right now, that deer wasn't going to be the typical record of all time. He just wasn't. I mean, it'd be nice, but he just wasn't built for it. I think potentially with Mike being on the panel, more so being the moderator for them scoring it and being able to argue, I think I could have got the state typical record for Ohio Big Buck, but even at that point, there's just so much drama, man, and just so many people saying, do this, do that. I'm like, I don't even, in the end, I really don't even care. I don't care about that stuff.
It's hunting. You'd think there'd be no drama, too.
See, I understand like that point of it, but then again, like as much as you want to believe it or not, like if I almost feel like if you are blessed enough to shoot a deer that caliber, it's almost like a mandatory thing to like not say get scrutinized to your extent. That's not at all what I'm saying, because but I'm just saying like due diligence needs to be done when it comes to like fact checking. Like I'm 100% for, you know, like saying, okay, I want the facts to be laid out. And since it is that big of a deer and it can have, you know, a significant impact on basically the industry.
Yep.
I understand them like double checking everything, you know, maybe not go to the extent of confiscating it, which we'll get into that here in a second. But like, I think it deserves an investigation, as crappy and as un-American as that sounds.
Yeah. No, I think that's completely fair. And there's a video that went around of him in a field. You can't tell exactly where this video is taken. They don't know where that one even originated from, but they claim it was on that property that they claim I shot it on, but they don't know the date. And if I had to guess just by the trees in the background, I would say it was probably mid-October. And I don't care that people speculate necessarily, just objectively looking at it. I never even, if the ODNR officers were like, we know that deer was back there, I never said it wasn't back there at all. But deer for a fact travel. And where I live, it is flat as can be. And it's nothing but open ag fields. All it takes is a dude trying to shoot that deer, him running off, or him being on a doe, almost getting hit by a car. And who's to say he don't run 10 miles? It's so hard to tell.
It's a wild animal at the end of the day.
Yeah. People are like, it was safe here. It would have stayed right here. Okay.
I've heard everything from 12 to 25 miles. It's something different every single time. No one has the exact miles.
Just kind of explain that a little bit. Why is 12 to 25 miles like significant? Because from what you sent before the podcast, it's that's the distance from like a DA's house or something like that.
So, okay, everyone's saying it's the DA, which the DA is Andrew McCoy. The guy's property that they claim I shot this deer on is William McCoy. That is his brother. But everyone's saying it's 20, 25 miles, and it's not. It's literally half that. It's 10.33 if you drop a pin on it and take it to my sister's. We'll say that trail camera picture did come from that property. We'll say it did. That's October 16th. You're telling me that deer it's not possible for that deer to travel 10 miles in over 20 days.
No, I heard a story the other day. I'm a big fan of Don Higgins. I listen to like all the stuff.
I love Don Higgins.
And so I drove through central or south central Illinois, like where he lives, when I was on my way to Ohio. And Don said there was a neighbor that sent him a picture of a buck, or a friend, or one of the two. And it was like, I think 2 days before he got a picture of it. And he said the distance during that time period that the deer traveled was 11 miles.
Yep.
And that seems, I'm not saying your deer did that. I have no way to confirm or deny that. I have no idea. But it's not out of the realm of possibility if it indeed was 10 miles.
That's why I don't care that people speculate, because I get that, like, especially depending on how you know deer and stuff like that. You like, the picture right there, that doesn't make sense. But in all reality, these deer can do way crazier things than people give them credit for.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
got
we
one
had-
buck about 7 miles apart right now that I sent to my buddy just because I was like, wow, this is a giant 8-pointer. He sends me back this picture of the same deer. And you look on the map, he's got to cross a river. He's got to go through neighborhoods, everything. But somehow he made it. So God knows where else he's been too.
Yep.
Well, Bronson Strickland, we had him on the podcast, I think this last spring, and he was talking about a buck. It's called Buck 140. And what that deer did was it spent its fall and winter in Mississippi, and then it crossed the Mississippi River sometime during the spring and summer, and it actually summered in Louisiana. And from home range to home range, it was 18 miles just as a crow flies. So that's not including all that stuff. And so, yeah. So, I mean, a deer can travel. Now, time frames are of the essence here, but again, on your case, there hasn't been nothing to prove otherwise. And so that's where I feel like that speculation comes from. But I mean, we have all this research and like collared deer and just
everything the same way. When the sheds, I said Dustin Huff's buck was the same way. The sheds were what, 8 or 9 miles away from where he ended up killing him.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. He mentioned that, and then he said the dude never even sold him the sheds to that thing either. I don't think, which is I think's a little bad. But
I think where the 20-mile thing came from, and I'm not knocking the dude at all. I get what he was trying to do, but the sheds, I'm sure you guys have seen the sheds that the dude look super similar. But he claims that they were found by a dude 20 to 25 miles away. My biggest thing with that is, if you're buying sheds off someone, are they going to tell you where they just found 200-inch sheds? The real place that they found the 200-inch sheds? Because I'm not.
I wouldn't do that for a
no way.
Sheds, to be honest.
Then you would go, they'd be like, oh, I'm going to hunt that deer.
And about those sheds.
Get around to people.
Yeah. About those sheds, weren't those like years apart too?
Okay. So he bought them, I believe, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So they would have been from 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And he sent me the scores of them. I believe the main beams were like 28 inches. Mass was still in the 40s, like 6.5-inch bases and stuff like that. So it was a 200-inch deer.
Yeah.
So if that deer was 10 and you go 6 years ago, that would put him at 4 years old. You're saying he held a 200-inch rack for 6+ years? And if he wasn't 10, say he's 1 year old, he's going to have a 210-inch frame? No way. It just doesn't make sense. Which, if they are that deer, if you could confirm that they were that deer, it'd make them worth money. It makes sense. And do they share a lot of similarities? Absolutely.
So does that freaking Seek 1 deer too.
Yep.
States apart. So
the thing on those sheds, to me, like, it looked like it had the same common base thing that yours had. It had like a lot of similarities. And it looked on the ends of the beams of your buck, how they're kind of like, it's almost textured.
Yeah.
Like, it looked like it had similar texture in the beams. To me, the sheds that was probably one of the most undeniable pieces of evidence, I think, that didn't look good for you.
Yeah.
And the sheds looked very, very similar. The only thing that I think would work well in your favor there is the time period. If that didn't line up.
Yeah, he paddled and everything. Like, he took screenshots of the deer on the Hunt Our podcast and like the shed and compared it and stuff. And I mean, it looks dead on. The common base thing on that G2, instead of being on that common base, it was more so like his G2 popped up and then up here it like split up like that. It was quite a ways up the G2.
Yeah.
But he even had the short G2 on the one side and everything like that, which, who knows? They could have shared genetics, but I agree. The veining and stuff on the antlers, not even. I'd have to see them in person, man. I'd have to see them both in person. And
I'm sure they will. I'm sure the DNR will. And I don't know. I don't think there's a way to take genetics from antlers. You can drill out the pedicle and get the DNA sent off, but I believe in order to do that, you would have to drill out in the pedicle of mine, which I hope they don't do that. That would that'd be, especially if I end up coming out good on all this. They hand you back another set of sheds.
Yeah.
And you're like, these aren't mine. Like, yeah, we had to drill into it.
Oh gosh.
something I want to just touch on, and which I'm trying to lead this more into like the accusation side of it, since you got in front of it and told your side. The thing that like really doesn't sit right with me, and again, I'm one of those people that like obviously I don't depend on other people. Like my joy of the hunt doesn't determine on what other people think of the hunt. Like I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is like a question I have that pops up, and again, I'm very neutral in this situation, so I don't want you to take offense to anything, right?
No, you good.
But a thing that like doesn't sit right with me is if you knew that, you know, you said you had something special, you knew it as soon as you seen them laying between those ponds, and at the time you did have your phone. I mean, again, I've never shot a deer that caliber, so I don't know the mindset that goes into this, but would you not think to like take pictures or video of this to kind of cover your tracks if you kind of knew what you had? Does that
You
make
would,
sense?
yes, you would think, but honestly, I don't know. Think about times when you were younger hunting, the adrenaline, like, because there's a time like now when I see does, I really don't, that adrenaline don't
Right.
kick or anything like that. But you know, your first year in, you are tore up from the floor up, don't know your ass from your elbow when those deer come in.
Right.
And it's like that on steroids. Like, it's like finding a dead body. I imagine that's what I could compare it
You
to.
speaking from experience or?
Alleged. But no, you're right. I mean, that's a great question. I don't even have an answer to that. I should have, but I didn't.
So there's one picture of it though, right? I think we talked about it on the phone. Like there's one picture of him kind of laying rack up one side in the daylight, and that's the one daylight picture that I think's been
We were
circulated
getting
around.
ready to go get the truck and load them up, and it was back where my stand was, and there's a bunch of leaves on the ground and stuff like that. But yeah, Corey took a picture of him laying down there.
So that wasn't even you that took that photo.
Nope. And that's why I think the DNR think that I did take pictures of it in the daylight. And I've told people, they're probably going to go through your phone, and if there's any pictures, they'll find it. And that's what they told me. I was like, I mean, okay, they can think I'm full of shit, but they ain't going to find no picture on that phone. It didn't cross my mind.
So let's, before we get more into the stuff that people are kind of accusing, can you talk about the process of what happened, like how you find out this deer's getting confiscated, maybe where it was, and like what all they took from you, like what the process of getting investigated is like when you shoot a buck?
Okay, so they came, we'll say November 15th for that first visit.
Yeah.
I can't even think of this exact day I went, but I went to Keith Snyder's, and he did want to buy it 100%. And for me, man, the amount of money, people think these deer are worth a lot more than what they are, and they're not. There's 200-inch deer that get sold all the time, and people pay $5,000 for them.
I looked on eBay. You can get a really nice buck for pretty cheap, like $300-$400.
Yes.
That surprised the crap out
You
of me.
would
I'm
look on
serious.
eBay, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I was just curious.
And
Yeah.
that's something that Keith said to me. He's like, I can get 300-inch farm sheds for $800. Why would I pay $100,000 for this deer? Because he asked me, he was like, if you were to sell it, like what's in your head? What do you think? I was like, for me to even consider it, man, $100,000. That's even for me to consider it at all. And he's like, they're just not worth that. And I said, that's fine. To me, I would rather hand it down to my son than sell it for some cheap amount. Even in $20,000, man, I'm 28 years old. You're not retiring off of that. Chances are I'll go spend it on dumb shit. It's just
buy a new truck.
Side by side and some Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. It would just mean more knowing that it's going to one of my son or one of my stepsons, if whichever one enjoys hunting and loves it the most. Like that's more sentimental, and that's worth more than money ever would be. But me and him did talk about him doing the replicas, and I agreed. I was like, I'll let you do the replicas. And I told him, he said he wanted to market the deer and do some stuff for me and help me out with shows and get me in the best booths that he could. And I said, if you're a man of your word and you do everything that you say you're going to do, we'll see where all this ends, and we'll talk about this again. So I left it with him, and he was going to get the replicas made by Jack Comp. Jack Comp ended up getting COVID. So it didn't even end up getting sent off to him, which I'm glad it didn't, because he's in West Virginia. So that would be it going between state lines, and then they'd be trying to hit me with the Lacey Act.
Yeah.
But nothing from ODNR or anything. They showed up December 22nd, probably 6 o'clock, maybe.
Evening or morning?
Evening.
Okay.
Knocked on my door, and when I opened the door, they kind of beat on the door like a cop. So I was sitting there on the phone with my friend.
Because they are the cops.
I was like, who the hell is beating on my door like this? And I opened the door, and I thought they were like some Jehovah's Witnesses or something like that. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, how you doing? I'm CJ. And then he told me who he was. He's like, do you care if we come inside? And I was like, no, not at all. So they come inside. I started moving stuff on the couch. And like, well, you care if we go out to the kitchen? And I was like, that's fine. And they're like, do you know why we're here? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, there's a lot of rumors going around, and we want to put them to bed once and for all. He said, so just want you to recount the whole story to the best of your ability. And we'll go through and we'll talk about it. And they wanted to see the deer, and I was like, I don't have it right now. And they were kind of being really weird about like, where's it at? What'd you do with it? I wouldn't let that thing out of my sight. Side note, when they came in, the first thing they said, they're like, so how's it feel to be famous now? And I was just like, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm famous, but to me, that's just a weird thing to start with. Like, and that's what a lot of people said. They were like, the only reason you went on these podcasts and stuff is for fame. And man, the whole reason I did it is to give it to God, because the fame and stuff, it's all superficial. Like, people will love you for 1 minute, and then something comes up when you're in the public's eye like that. Say I go get caught drinking and driving, and none of this stuff ever happens. I'm like, oh, that dude's a piece of shit. Like, I know how this stuff goes. But we talked about it, and after about an hour and a half, they were finally like, do you really want to know why we're here? And I was like,
they waited an hour and a half to tell you want to know why we're here.
Yep. And they said,
I'd have been like, that'd be nice. Yeah, we could get to the chase.
So he opens this folder, and I could kind of see the pictures he was flipping through, which I guess was their evidence. And he pulled the picture of him laying there dead in the daylight. He said, you know this picture? And I was like, I mean, yeah, that's my deer laying there dead. And he's like, you see that stick right there? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I see it. And he's like, what's that stuff right there? I was like, I believe that's a hunting jacket, and that's my bag laying there. And he's like, oh, okay. And he said, well, we found the stick. And I said, you what? And he said, we found the stick. And I was like, all right. And he's like, it wasn't on your sister's property. So he pulls out another picture. The ground literally does not even look. It almost looked like this picture was taken in a bean field. But he's like, here's the stick right here. And they had like a blue backpack kind of set up against it, kind of stage it to look like it was the same stick. And he's like, is that the stick? And I was like, I mean, they look like the same stick. I'm not denying that. And he's like, well, it wasn't on your sister's. And I was like, I mean, it's a stick, dude. It's a honeysuckle stick. There's honeysuckle all over this place. All over. Any thicket you go in, you're going to find honeysuckle. Mm-hmm. So he kind of like diverted off of that. And he said, what kind of knife you have? And I was like, a buck knife. And he said, are you sure? And I was like, I mean, yeah, it's upstairs. And he said, well, we found your knives too. And he pulls out a picture of 2 knives, literally laying there perfectly on leaves, side by side like this. He said, those are your knives. And I was like, I've never seen those knives before in my life. And he went on this round for probably 20 minutes. He's like, just tell us the truth. It'll be easier. Like, we'll be able to help you. And I told him, I was like, look, my dad did this for a living. I know that's not how this works. They can say they're going to help you all day long, but it's not up to them. It's not even up to the prosecutor in the end. It's up to the judge. So we went on for probably another hour and a half going back and forth. And they told me that they were taking the cape, taking the horns, and that they needed them. Asked where they were, told them where they were. Asked me for the crossbow, which I think they thought that it was really my crossbow and that was a lie, which I went upstairs like, here's my crossbow, strings broke, not an Excalibur. And they're like, well, we're going to look around. I was like, go ahead. I mean, you ain't going to find it. Corey has it, which come to find out they had officers there at Corey's place too. But they kept getting me to try to talk to him. And I said, I'm going to make a phone call. And I was going to call my dad, so I was going to call him. They're like, we can't let you out of our sight. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, we can't let you out of our sight. I was like, you guys can stay here. I mean, I'm gonna go upstairs in my room. He's like, no, we can't let you. I was like, well, I don't want to have this conversation with you guys right here. I was like, what if I'm calling my attorney? He's like, we can't because it's an officer safety issue. I was like, dude, I don't even have any guns in the house. The only thing I have in the house that's shootable is a broke crossbow. What am I gonna do? Stick it in there and like swing it out at you? Like, I'm not gonna do nothing.
Even broke still shoots 200 feet per second.
Yeah.
Cross gun.
And he pulled out his phone. He's like, well, you can call him off my phone. And I was like, no. Like, even if you're under arrest, you still get a phone call. And I was like, am I under arrest? He's like, no. I was like, and I can't make a phone. He's like, no, we can't let you do that. So yeah, they ended up taking my cell phone, my fiance's cell phone, Corey's crossbow, the cake from the taxidermist, and the antlers.
They didn't take your truck or anything like that?
Nope.
Or your car, nothing like that?
Nope.
And is that the last time you've heard anything from them, or how does that work? Do they keep in contact with you and they keep updating you, or what?
He came back. There's another that just reminded me of something too that I'll say. He came back, I think December like 28th, if I recall, and it was just Ryan Garrison, which is Joel Buttelmeyer, I think, was supposed to be the head investigator, but he had worked cases with my dad previously in the past, so I think it's conflict of interest, and he kind of stepped back and let Ryan take the lead. So Ryan came over to the house, and he was sitting there talking, and he's like, you got to make it make sense to me. I don't understand why Keith would have it if you didn't sell it to him. And I was like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. He's like, I just need you to tell me the truth. I was like, I am telling you the truth. And he just went round and round and round. And he told me that they didn't have a warrant. They had the warrant to seize my phone, but not go through it yet. And they were like, we're going to go through it. We'll find this stuff. And I was like, that's fine. You're not going to find anything. Come to find out, you know how on social media, it's like your Instagram, your Facebook and stuff, you can go look at your location history.
Mm-hmm.
I have location pings from my phone December 24th, 25th, and 26th because they told me if I didn't give them my passcode that they were going to have to break my phone. And I have an iPhone 13 Pro Max. I don't want to have to go pay another $1,000 for a phone. It's like, dude, whatever, I'll give you my passcode. So either my phone magically went to Instagram or they were going through my phone when they weren't supposed to. And that's coming out of his mouth. I don't see why he would tell me they don't have a search warrant to get the contents.
Here's an interesting point, and I thought this could be, like I said, I don't know the story of this, but I'm speculating here. I know that iPhones, you said you have a 13 Pro Max.
Yep.
If you don't turn off location services on a photo, you can swipe up on the photo and it shows you to the freaking leaf where you are standing. And
100%.
I've said that is either going to be the biggest help for you ever, or that is going to be the biggest detriment that shows something that you're saying is not true. Because
if I would have took a picture, it would have been my.
If you would have took a photo, right?
Yep.
What about Corey's phone though?
That was going to be my next question.
That I don't know about. Honestly, they haven't went for his phone or anything like that, but he's in talks with his attorney and stuff like that. So, I mean,
then if it's legit, I feel like that'd be the end all be all of it. If Corey's just like, hey, look, here's the picture, you know, because like obviously the way the iPhone's set up ever since we figured that out, like if we send a buck picture or something to somebody, or at least what I'll do is I'll screenshot it on my phone. That way, you know, I'm in Oklahoma or wherever. I'm not where we hunt on public or something like that if I send a photo.
Yep.
And so
yeah, because if you send it, it'll send that metadata with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yep.
because Basement Decorator.
Oh my God! Yeah,
Basement
just do
Decorator.
that.
Screwed yourself.
Thomas
You're
Stanford.
starting to use your head now, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, good
Thomas
luck.
has sent me a picture before of a nice trail cam photo, and I slid up and I said, "Are you in XYZ, North Carolina? I just got a 1,000-acre lease." I was pulling his leg, but I said, "I just got a 1,000-acre lease," and I sent him like the exact coordinates, like the property next to where he was hunting. And he was like, he said, "Are you serious?" He said, "That is right next door, and we live 1,400 miles apart." And I was like, "No, you need to turn your location services off. I know exactly where you hunt." And he was like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, we're good buddies, so it doesn't matter." But I didn't even know that.
Their advantage.
Yeah. There's some
Advantage
people
or
out there that would
disadvantage.
take that.
No, for sure. I would.
My location services
I'm just
are
kidding.
off on my phone, but I don't know about Corey's. But even if they are, attorneys will be able to get that thing to prove stuff. And that's why I'm out here publicly defending it and stuff like that. I know what they're going to be able to get and what they're not going to be able to get.
There's been like forums and like posts floating around social media where it says you actually confess to, I don't know the right wording, whether that be unlawful harvest of deer or trespassing or whatever the different posts say, but it says that you confess something. Is that true, or is that just a rumor mill?
Bullshit. And it's funny. It's funny that they say that too, because they said 6 officers. If you remember, I told you guys there was 2 detectives that showed up after they started taking everything and come like doing their thing. 4 other ODNR officers showed up, and other than just now me telling you guys that and telling Corey that, it's the only people that knew. So I just find it weird that there were like all these details and stuff. There's only certain places it could come from. But that's bullshit. And if that was the case, why would they release a 1-paragraph article? Even with it being an open investigation, there wouldn't be no investigation to be had. You have a confession. That's like saying the dude confessed to murdering them, but we're still going to do the investigation. Right. Don't make sense.
It was weird because when it happened, I think day after Christmas, when that stuff came out or whatever it was about 200% more vague than I was expecting. It was just like, it was basically giant buck investigation happening. That's what we got. But there's a ton of information on Facebook or Instagram or wherever else. And it's like, do you not think that these people who are reporting on this stuff want to give as much information as they can to make their article the most valuable, to be the one that gets shared? And it's like, I was expecting all the location services or stuff, like there's got to be some sort of smoking gun. And the stuff that I heard, it's just like, it's neither here nor there. It's like, maybe not.
Yep.
But that's kind of what throws me off. And I feel like it throws off a lot of people, is if like, from what you've told and from what like the articles out there, just the lack of information, you would think that just what Christian said, they have a smoking gun, but also if they don't, why are they keeping it this long? Does that, I don't know. That just seems weird.
I feel like if the ODNR would have took pictures, like you said, the day he came out or whatever, if you would have took pictures of where that deer was laying, of where he found blood, you could have easily seen the picture that they tried to find that stick on. That was a completely different environment. Like you claimed to look like it been in a bean field. You could have clearly tell from 2 different photos that those were not the same things. But it seemed like he kind of avoided that. Yeah,
well, he discredited that statement because he said it was such a gap in time that the leaves and stuff had rotted and stuff like that. But dude, it didn't even, they had it zoomed in on the picture of this stick to where it was blurred out. And in the picture where he's laying dead, there's other land features you can see.
Yeah.
But they weren't focused on those other land features. It was just this stick. And I know for a fact if that's what they're basing this off of, I sent that picture to Keith December 10th. I think he posted it December 11th. So they would have from December 11th to the 22nd to find this stick and find all of this stuff. Like, it just makes no sense. Like, you didn't take no pictures at my sister's. If you did think something was up, me personally, if I'm investigating it, I'm taping it off. I'm gonna be like, hey, we don't want anyone back there. This is why we think there's something up with this, and we're gonna look into it. It's just, it don't make sense to me.
They didn't tape it off?
No.
How's the vibe around what'd you say your county's name was? Clinton or Canton? Clinton. So what's the hometown think about, all that mess?
Dude, a lot of people, because
land prices went up probably.
Oh yeah. Which I find it funny because Larry Roberts, his property is right beside this property, and he owns 60% of Clinton County. So his land prices, he owns recreational. That's what he's going to be doing. He's going to be selling it and stuff. But just from the people that are involved and have been directly involved with Larry Roberts, like without a doubt, I don't know, man. It's just weird. But there's people saying that it was shot in the cemetery. The cemetery literally, Gabe, you could drive up here.
I know which one you're talking about.
It says right when you drive in, security cameras in use. They're like, that deer has been in the cemetery and this and that. Okay, if this deer has been all these places that these people are saying it is.
That cemetery is like on the complete opposite side from where your place is, too, from where the Roberts
Yeah,
place is.
where are the pictures? Like, there's security cameras in the thing.
Yeah, true. Where's the
Where's
pictures
that?
of you going on?
If he was over there behind the dump and people claim that they seen him and everything, where are the pictures? Because all of us, obviously, I can look at a deer that's 150s and be pretty close. I might say, oh, he's 140s, or maybe I'll even think he's 160. But the everyday person, if you see 170, 180 inch deer, you're like, that was that deer. It was the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. Like, maybe you did see a big deer back there, because I know Lucas has killed giants back there, and he actually hunts Larry Roberts' property, the one right beside where they're claiming I shot this deer.
Yeah.
Run cameras on that property. Have since last year. Not one picture of that deer.
I can tell you that we were talking about this me and Jake were today, completely like unrelated, but we were talking about big deer that we've seen. We've seen probably one deer on hoof that's like 170 or better, and it was on public land in the summer. And I remember people asking, like just close friends, how big do you think that buck was? And I'm like, dude, 170, 185, 190. I'm like, I have no idea.
170, you just guess at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you really know.
When I told Corey, when he asked me how big I thought it was, I said 180, 190. that was my guess. Biggest deer I've ever seen.
But yeah, I mean,
6 inches off. That's fine.
yeah, 6 inches off.
Yeah, it's just once it gets to a certain point, I think it's pretty hard to judge. And I think for general everyday people, it's hard to judge too. I've had people who are like, dude, there's a giant back there, and it'd be 100-inch 8-point.
Yeah,
you just never know.
it's crazy to me that no one's came out about that trail cam video of where that deer's at. That's really crazy to me. Because there's no way you posted that and then it's the biggest deer out there.
Where I heard it came from was some dudes in Georgia. And supposedly they lease land close to my sister's. That's what I heard. But that could be bullshit. That could just be them wanting credit, it being passed down.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it originated from somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it was
I
the
hope
deer.
they find it.
That video doesn't look
There's
real.
no denying that. No,
It doesn't look
especially-
real. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wait, explain that to me. What?
There's like one photo or one video that's
It's a
circulating
video at
about
night,
a
October
video.
16th.
Yeah.
And it says power line edge underneath of it. And like I was telling
Oh,
Chris,
that's what you're talking about earlier.
yeah.
I got you.
So power line edge, yeah, I can see where you come from because there's one that runs on those properties, but there's also one right by my sister's. Who's to say? Like, that's completely circumstantial and speculation until you figure out. And even if you do figure it out and it does come back that it was on that property, you still can't say that deer didn't travel.
What's the population around Clinton County?
I would say it's
Yeah.
not huge, but it's not small.
Right. Well, and it just, I don't know. Everything about this is just like making my head spin because like I thought I had a pretty good grasp on it, like probably everybody does. But after hearing all this stuff, there's so much things that like don't make sense, that doesn't add up from both sides. I mean, from your side, there's a few things, about the pictures, about, somewhat the location, but I mean, then again, as we talked about earlier, the Seek One situation, all that stuff. And so like there's nothing hard there to like convince me one way or the other.
Yep.
But also from the DNR side, or whatever y'all call them over there, the game wardens, just things weren't done in a timely fashion where it could, just clear this whole thing up automatically. But also with the way social media works nowadays, unless the DNR like contacted the people that actually have trail camera photos and saying, hey, you give us these photos of this deer because this is still an ongoing investigation. And, let's not post it online. But you would think there'd be people that get a hold of those photos somehow, some way of this deer and just absolutely splurge it all over the socials. And like that's what's the most like shocking to me is the day and age we live in. And yet there's so much lack of information like revolving around this deer.
That's one of my biggest points for sure, is like, if I know people well enough to know that if those pictures existed, they would get around and they would get posted.
100%.
They'd be like, "This kid's full of shit. This buries him. Here's the proof right
Yeah.
here." And I welcome anyone. I welcome it to try to prove that, because you're not going to. And I definitely agree. I'm not saying anyone's wrong for speculating, because I can see your point of view. I can see your perspective. I can get looking back. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I should have done this. I should have done that. But
Hindsight's key, though. Yeah.
it always is, man.
It's so easy. Like, one thing I've noticed through going through hunting Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska, Kansas, Ohio, just driving through all these states is like, it's very hard for someone from a different part of the world to grasp like what things look like somewhere else unless you've been there.
Yeah.
I drove through Southwest Ohio, and as Gabe and I were driving through, I kept commenting, dude, it's rural, but there's so many effing people. It's
Yeah,
rural,
every
but there's so
time.
many effing people. Like, I just kept telling him that. I was like, oh, we go around a corner. I'm like, we're finally out in the middle of nowhere. Take a left. There's 15 houses. And the average land holding and some of the properties even that Gabe was hunting were these 5-acre pieces or little 30-acre pieces or 10-acre pieces.
Yep.
And every one of those pieces had a feeder or a blind or a tree stand, and there's interest in hunting. And if a deer like that exists, you cannot convince me that there's not pictures that exist of that deer.
Especially with the terrain, just the actually on the hoof.
Dude, there's
sightings
no
of that deer.
trees.
That's what I'm saying. And
It's
if you
just
ever rode
fields.
anywhere close to any of those ag
Treeless.
fields, if you see a big old freaking moose out there, you're going to be like, oh my God. And I'm sure everybody and their dog has a pair of binos out there. I carry
Yeah.
binos in my truck, and
I don't
you can't
even
even
own a
see
pair of
40
binos.
feet off the road.
Don't even own a pair. That's kind of like the crossbow thing. That's the only deer I've ever shot with a crossbow. He's a crossbow shooter. No, I've
It
killed
just
all
had to
my
be that
other.
one.
Yeah. Of course, the biggest one I kill is with a crossbow, but
I think it's gonna shock a lot of people too, because I know it shocked me. Because after our first phone call or whatever, because I knew I made that video or whatever and deleted it when we talked or whatever. It shocked me how like confident you were in your story and how like you were like, no, nothing's happening. Like I'm fine. Like, and I that caught me by surprise. I think that's gonna catch a lot of people by surprise.
yeah. You also got to think though. I grew up with a detective as a father.
Yeah, used to all this.
And I know people who get pulled over by cops and they're like freaking out. I'm like, dude, he's not doing anything wrong. Like, just chill out. It's a person. But I've always been like, I've grew up around them and stuff like that. So it just doesn't. And I know what's what. So
Yeah.
So basically, you just know how to get around the system, is what you're saying.
I don't know if you can get around the system, to be honest with you.
No,
Well,
I'm just messing.
I've told Jake, it's like, dude, you are either the world's worst narcissist or you're completely innocent. There's no in between
Yeah.
for me, because the confidence, it just doesn't make any sense.
And that's what I told you, man. Like, saying what I just said about my dad being a detective and knowing how this stuff works, you think if I poach this deer, realistically, I'm a big enough dumbass to go on a podcast, to do North American Whitetail, to do outdoor life. It doesn't matter what benefit I have. They're going to find out, period. If it's bullshit, they're going to find out. I would keep it a secret. Wouldn't even post it to my Instagram. No one would have known about that deer for 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years down the road, what evidence would you find? There wouldn't be any left.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So how big was the property that you shot this deer on?
Okay, I've been getting bashed about this. I said it was
Because-
about 30 acres.
Yeah.
It has been surveyed, so I'm going to give you. I know what Onyx and stuff says. It's 10.3 acres. I've been told my whole life that it was 30, and I did not have Onyx, Barton Ford. I didn't have anything like that on my phone. So I had no way to check. I was been taking the words. And if you would have went to that property before it got logged and before it got bush hogged, you can't even see from the front of the property to the back. That's how thick it was. Like, I'm talking CRP and cattails, 9 foot tall, just absolute thick as can be. But it is 10.2, 10.3 acres.
Because
And-
it's out there now where this is. There's pictures of the property and stuff, and it's like, I clicked out on an Onyx and it said 8 acres. I was like, 8 versus 30. That ain't adding up.
My own
don't-
sister called me out about that. She was like, 30 acres? She's like, where's my other 20 underneath the ponds? I was like, that's what you guys always told me. She's like, who told you that? I was like, "Your Grandma Joe?" And she's like, "No, she's full of shit."
I think another pretty big one would be the rigor mortis situation that a lot of people see from the photos. You
Mhm.
want to touch on that?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure I would feel like you guys would be able to relate to this. Have you guys ever made a bad shot on a decent buck and had to find
I
it?
haven't. No.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Listen
Yeah.
to any of
Good
our
on you.
podcasts, and I guarantee you'll hear about 5 of them.
Yeah. Watch our kill shot video. Yeah.
Okay, so a deer, when you kill it, it does not keep rigor mortis forever. You got to think. If I shot him at 5:30 the day before, say he died at 5:30 in the morning in between those ponds, laid there dead for 7 hours, 6 hours before we found him, putting him in the truck, hanging him up, taking him back down, taking him to the apartment for the kids and stuff to see him meet Sierra so she knows how to get to my sisters, driving back out there, setting him up for photos. Rigor mortis doesn't last forever, and I challenge anybody to have a deer, go hang it up when it's 0 degrees outside right now. Go kill a doe, hang it up for 5 days, take it down, work its neck, and it's going to be just as loose as when that deer was freshly dead.
I've been using the new Exodus Rival cell camera for the last couple months, and I have found a beautiful mainframe 8-point with tons of stickers to go after this fall.
Ooh.
One thing I do appreciate about Exodus trail cameras is all of the cameras share the same data plan, so you only pay for what you need. A lot of cell cam companies charge you for HD pictures. I've seen prices of $5 for 50 HD pics. Exodus is going to give you unlimited HD pictures right to your phone, which is awesome when you're sitting there in the middle of the summer and it's 100 degrees and you just want to binge a bunch of trail cam photos.
If you're looking for a solid cell camera with great performance and a 5-year no BS warranty, go check them out. So as we all know, hunting gear is something people can make way too complicated. Arrows can be the exact same way. Instead of going down all those rabbit holes, trying to sift through the endless information that's online and you're not really sure if it's right or wrong, Exodus makes it simple to get the right arrow for your exact setup.
So go online to the Exodus Arrow Builder. It takes less than a minute. You're going to enter your draw weight, your draw length, and how heavy of a point you're shooting. And it's going to be that simple. Let the guys at Exodus take care of the rest.
So if you're interested in Exodus Rival cell cameras or a new set of their MMT arrows, just go to ExodusOutdoorGear.com and use code HA15 for 15% off anything on their website.
Once again, that is ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Use code HA15 at checkout for 15% off. Now let's get back to the podcast.
It stretches the muscle and
Google
stuff
it, but I
like
don't know how to spell it really. So
that.
Well,
Yeah.
I've seen it happen too with deer where you take one out of the truck that's been dead a little while, and the first thing you do is we got to work this out. So you get on the other one side of the rack, your buddy gets you on there, and you're just herking and jerking on it until it eventually is loose enough.
Yeah.
That's just one more of those things that is like maybe that's something, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
but that's kind of, I mean, I could see where that's coming from because a lot of us, we shoot a deer and by the time we get it and all that stuff's just now starting to get, stiff. And then, but by that time, I'd probably say the average hunter nowadays drops it off at the processor and they take care of all that stuff. So I assume they don't get to really see the after effects of a lot of that stuff. Now, I haven't Googled it and I don't know from personal experience that, if the rigor mortis is, actually wears off or not. I'm not that smart. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying from like my level of
That was
seeing things.
honestly a fair point. I never really thought about that. I've always cut up my own deer. Like ever since I learned how to, ever since I was probably about 14 years old, I've always processed my own deer.
I just wish I had the patience for that because it was the
It's horrible. It's horrible. I loathe
It
it.
was-
I loathe it.
Eric Clark off the OK's Hunter. He had a little short run through like TikTok or Facebook or something like that, and he was talking about how most people don't process their own deer and how it was just a headache. And he said the words, "I put the process in processing," and that was probably the best thing I've heard all year.
That's great. For me, the reason I do it is because all that like silver membrane and stuff that's on the meat, I don't like that stuff. And I think in order to get it to taste the best, which it sucks because you lose a lot. But when I was living with mom and dad, I would feed it to the dogs and make it dog food. But I trim all that stuff off, man. So I can cut it the way I want to, grind up what I want to grind up. Got a dehydrator, and I don't have to spend another $100. So
That stuff puts some hair on your chest. You got to eat that silver skin.
Ew. There's
If
a
you're
lot
not
of
chewing for
stories.
8 minutes, you're not doing good.
There's a lot of stories around here. Like if you take them to the processor, like I
You
don't know
might
how
get
you'd
the
really
same
be
deer
able to
back.
know or whatever. Yeah, you don't get the same deer back. So
Yeah.
like that's why I don't do it. It's 'cause-
Hey, sometimes that works in my favor because I'll drop off like a little doe or something and I get 3 bags and I'm like, okay, and I just hightail it out of there. I'm like, all right, don't know how you did this, but God bless.
So you just confirmed that theory is probably correct.
Probably, yeah.
He said we got 100 pounds extra deer meat.
Oh, that's funny. Well, because I assume I've heard from some processors, like when they're making this, like some of the things, they throw everything they have into it, and then they recipe it out after that, and then they sell it that way. I
Yeah.
guess it's just easier that way, and then instead of doing it individually. But still, I want my deer back,
Until they give you a deer that's laid dead for 10 days.
Yeah, literally
Or raw.
weeks old.
Let me ask you this. I think we talked about it in the beginning a little bit, but there were, and I think we talked about it on the phone before the podcast. There were knives on the DA's property that they were going to test DNA from to see if it matched your buck, correct?
Yep.
And they got the DNA from the cape of your buck, or how are they gonna do that?
That's the thing, man. DNA is not, it doesn't work like that. You can't have blood DNA and take hair from the hide or flesh from the hide. It has to be blood on blood to get 100% fact to know that deer, it's that deer stuff. And I mean, they're more than welcome to do that, man, but it'd be just as easy as someone going out there on my sister's property and jamming a knife in the carcass. I mean, I can get where they're coming from, but those are not my knives. Like, yeah, there's knives out there, but there's also homeless camps everywhere out there. Maybe there's a dead homeless dude out there that got shivved. I don't know. Maybe they'll find something else out.
Well, Jake, we found several knives on public land, or you have.
Yeah,
walking around.
which I think I found like total. We've been hunting that public piece for like maybe 5 years or so, and I think I found 3 knives out there. But again, it is public, and I mean it's not private. But who is also to say that like that wasn't someone else out there? Or I mean, trash is trash. Trash is everywhere here.
That's another thing too. I told them that I had a buck knife and I had it upstairs, and they were like, "It's here," and I was like, "Yeah, it's upstairs." They didn't even ask me to go get it. Didn't even want to see it. So are you trying to prove me guilty? Are you really interested in the truth? Or are you interested in your narrative? And that's my biggest thing with all of this. Like, there's things, and I will agree that I should have took pictures. There's stuff that doesn't make sense on my side. I don't articulate myself very well on camera because I have anxiety and stuff. I mean, I know this is going on the internet, forever going to be on the internet. That's a nerve-wracking thing. And I'm sure you guys can relate to when you first started doing this stuff. You're probably like, oh man, I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to hear myself on camera and stuff like that. But
Nobody watched it anyway, so we're good.
Yeah, we had plenty of practice beforehand.
Yeah, exactly.
So is there anything else that like we didn't touch on that that like whether that be allegations or what it may be that you want to kind of bring to light that kind of I guess mellow down people?
Yeah, I still have no charges. It's been almost a month now. Literally no citation, no charges, nothing.
You can still go hunt if you want.
Yeah, 100%. Me and Gabe could go kill a doe right now, record it. Nothing they can do. And I just...
People are like, he's locked up already. He's behind bars.
He's in jail. Yeah, I had no way to get on my socials. It's all connected to my phone number. It'll send a 2-factor authentication code to my number. And I'm just, that's awesome. So I had no way to even defend myself. Everyone's like, I was messaging you and asking you about this. I'm like, hard to message back when I can't get in it. That's the thing. Like, they didn't even come over here and try to get another story or talk to me again. So it doesn't matter what I would have said when they came over here. If they had determined, like, we're taking this deer.
Do you know anybody kind of like, I mean, obviously you don't have to say names or anything but do you know anybody maybe on the inner circle of that where there might be feeding you bits and pieces of what the DNR has going there?
Mike Rex, I'm sure has connections to him and stuff, but even if they said something to him, which they shouldn't be because it is an investigation and it wouldn't be much of an investigation if you're telling stuff, but I don't think he would say. And some of the stuff that's came out, like, there's people, you can go look through all these YouTube videos. They're like, well, Matt Roberts, I'm friends with him, and he told me this. Like, he's literally a part of the investigation. He can't. And he was
Yeah,
actually showing up to my taxidermist. Showed up to his place 3 or 4 times trying to see the deer, like 2 weeks before it got taken. Like, just obsessed with it. That's the dude who has felony tampering with evidence charges as well, and is an ODNR officer.
Well, it's the same thing with like HIPAA. Like, my mom worked in healthcare and still works in healthcare, and it's like I can't tell you anything about anyone's medical records. Like, probably same thing with an investigation. I can't give you, like, I remember there was some stuff in Bonita about an investigation when my dad was the chief of police, and he's like, I can't really say anything about it. Like, it's an active investigation, and you're like, yeah, that's true. So if that is indeed happening, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it should work, because you don't know what people, with jealous people, you just don't know what they can do, man. They can tick. I have my old pair of hunting boots sitting on my porch right now. If someone knew the exact property and stuff like that, it's just as easy for them to go take my boot and go stomp it all over the ground, like, there's this boot print. But yeah, the basis of this investigation is a honeysuckle stick and 2 knives. Allegedly, they have blood on them. I didn't see no blood on them. We shall see.
That's just, I don't know. That's almost a hopeless feeling when it's like, I mean, granted, it's an investigation. I get that, but sitting on your hands and not really knowing the time frame of it, it's like, I mean, there's a certain point where you're just like, I don't even care anymore. I just want this to kind of be over with.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the whole charges and stuff thing. Like, even being innocent and stuff, that dude that dealt with this from North Carolina, a West Virginia guy, went down there. You guys ever hear that story?
Are you talking about the cemetery bucks?
No.
No, something different.
No, this dude's, I can't think of his name right now. He's got an active lawsuit right now. But this ODNR in West Virginia, or it'd be DNR officer or whatever they call him, was hunting a deer that he ended up killing there. Claimed he poached it, went down to North Carolina, got some DNR from North Carolina, asked to see the deer, hear the story, and they illegally seized the rack and was trying to press charges on him, and he did nothing wrong. Had proof that he did nothing wrong. That investigation and that whole process took a year, and even after it got settled that he was not guilty, it still took him 4 months to get his deer back.
Wow. You know what kind of charges you're facing right now, or like have you even really heard of that? Because I know it came out as like trespassing, whatever, but there's got to be something else.
Yeah. Permission.
So would that lead into something else? Like, would that be a poaching charge too? If they could,
if you look up the definition of poaching, trespassing to kill a deer would be
poaching.
Poaching.
It's got to be any illegal mean to kill a deer, right?
Yes, but poaching isn't necessarily a charge.
I feel like it's very broad. So many you can poach it so many different ways.
There's trespassing. I mean, if it was the case that that's what happened, then it would be trespassing. That's all it would be.
Yeah.
Just trespassing, which I've never been caught trespassing before in Ohio. I think it's a $150 fine.
Yeah, it is. It's a cheap.
And then
on my wrist.
And then obviously you would have all the restitution and stuff to go along with it. But,
probably your hunting license ban and all that.
But yeah, no, they didn't even say anything about charges or anything like that. I know just as much as you do.
So isn't there a huge restitution for like per inch if you?
Yeah. So I was reading
$1,000.
on this earlier. If it was like over a 125, then it's like $1 like something per inch of that. So I mean, in your case, it'd be like what, like I'm horrible at math, but
it'll be 30
tens of thousands,
34,000.
Someone told me it was $1,000 an inch.
No,
too high. Yeah.
And if honestly, what they charge people, not to say that they shouldn't, jail time would be the best thing to do. A fine is not going to. It's just as easy as I'm not going to pay the fine. What are they going to do? They're going to throw you in jail? I mean, that's all they could do, and I'm not even sure that's how it works with restitution. That'd be like a civil case. You're getting civilly sued. If you can't pay it, what's going to happen? It's probably going to go on your credit. You're not going to be able to rent or something like that again. But, I don't know where that math comes up from. Like,
yeah,
I guess it's the fee that they deem fit for stealing the animal. But if someone goes and plows into a doe right now, they'll be like, that's not the state's property. I don't own that deer.
So is there anything, like, let's just take a step back for a second and say, let's say we believe CJ did this completely legit. Is there anything, is it just, I know you're going to get absolutely plowed by the Ohio DNR in the state if they found you guilty. Is there anything you can do on the under end of this, or is it just the resolution of this is you leave me alone and I get my deer back?
If it comes out that they did all this illegally and wrongfully, I 100% could sue the state of Ohio. And the dude in North Carolina that's pursuing these charges for suing them and all the bullshit they put him through, he's going for $2.5 million. But I'll be honest with you, man. I don't care about that money. Don't get me wrong. Money is nice. I could send my kids to college and stuff like that. But there's so much. I would rather have my pride, my name, and my respect. Money is something that you cannot take with you. Yeah, it's nice to have, but it don't make you no better than any other person. And it don't fix the damage that has been done. No apology, no amount of money. It's more than it's already been done. To me, there's nothing that you can do to fix it.
So your ideal outcome is get your buck back and go along your way. Just leave it.
Honestly,
you wouldn't try to enter it into the Boone and Crockett or anything like that? I mean, because I understand what you just said, like it ain't about that, but also you got to think from the deer's perspective. Like that deer grew that, and it. I mean, to me, it deserves that record.
To me, records are for the deer too. It's not for you, 100%. Anyways.
Yeah,
that's why they have gross and net. I mean, gross is for the hunter, nets for the books.
I'll put it to you this way: say I go get a panel scored by Boone and Crockett, and they come back that they scored it a mainframe 8-pointer. And it's 172 inches because I believe it would be somewhere in the 170s range. And that's what it would get scored as a 4x4. People are going to be like, it's a 172-inch deer. Like, why are you blowing this out of proportion? Do you think that's fair to that deer? I mean, it's got the same inside spread as the Milo Hansen deer. It has 50 inches of mass and 32-inch main beams. But you're going to say it's a 170-inch deer. And I get, if it goes on the good side, that would be 100%. I would want that for that deer. It deserves to sit up there. But is it fair for them to subjectively be like, this deer isn't that? Like, y'all are tripping over nothing. It's 170-inch 4x4. That's kind of a shot. If I get the deer back and everything goes right, it is the new world record for crossbow.
Oh, it would be with a crossbow?
For BTR,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It beat it by like 40 inches.
What is the archery record? Because Milo's wasn't an archery kill, right?
He shot on a deer drive. I'm pretty sure.
I don't even know.
Was it that like Illinois deer or something like that? I was like, had that huge club coming off the side of him or whatever like that a couple years ago.
I'm thinking
I know which one you're talking about. The non-typical that was.
Oh, you're thinking typical. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, typical. I think it's like somewhere in the low twos, like 202, 201.
204. The Mel Johnson buck is the world record. So your buck could possibly be the world record archery buck if they consider it a crossbow archery. I don't know how it works.
They don't.
They don't.
No,
they don't.
No.
Okay. Interesting. So that if that was shot with a vertical bow, it'd literally be the archery world record.
Yeah, I could have thrown a spear at him and killed him. How close he was.
No wonder you don't need binos.
Yeah.
You're within 7 yards.
My tree.
You wouldn't need binos to see that thing.
No. Dude, I had a rangefinder in my front pocket right here. Didn't even pull it out.
I don't typically use my rangefinder too either. Because if he's under 20 yards from me, I just use my 20-yard pin. And you can normally tell if a deer's under 20 yards or not. Like, it's close.
Speaking of the 7-yard ordeal, did we touch on the shot placement yet? I forget.
The shot angle.
No,
angle.
No.
I think that would be good to kind of clear up as well.
Yeah. So, like, the hunter guys, they said, and they were speculating. They never said for sure. But Jeremy said that I think he's seen it locked down on a doe. First off, there's way too many security cameras on those businesses and way too many houses. If the DA's brother lives right there, you think he's not going to see someone stop, and you would have to shoot it at night. There's definitely no way you're shooting it in the middle of the day right down the road from literally a school. Going to see a spotlight, and you're never going to get that shot placement. I hit him literally probably 2-3 inches left leg, and it came out, where it literally came out maybe 2 inches above that. So there's no way, and the pictures I shared with you guys.
Okay, so he was quartered to you a little bit, and you hit him back.
It wasn't even so much he was quartered to me. It was the first place that I seen that I could make the best shot. So if I'm sitting there and he's on a clock, he was at my like 4:30-ish, maybe 5 o'clock. So he was broadside, but he was kind of back to my right a little.
I gotcha.
Yeah. And like the pictures of him broadside laying dead that I'm holding him in the my sister's property. You can't even see the broadhead hole. The only one you can see it in is the one
the
where I'm
hanging
holding
one.
them. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's because of the shot angle. There's no way you're getting that angle. And I had someone comment back to me. They're like, "You could have been on top of a hill." I was like, "What's that?" Yeah, I'd had to shoot him out of a helicopter, like levitate. Who am I? And if I shot it off the road, hell, I'd have to be driving the Gravedigger. I'd have to have a monster truck. I'll actually play devil's advocate here, because they said if I was to do this and he did kill it on here, this is how I would get in there. They said they would go through the dump, through the city land to get back there. Well, there's city workers that drive all up and down there, and you guys can look this up. There's literally been news articles about the coyote problems on the bike trail here in Wilmington, and there's been ODNR officers all up in back there. And there is no way you're walking with a crossbow in camo and hunting stuff down that bike trail or anywhere near there, and someone not being like, "I'm calling the cops on this guy." Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not plausible. Literally, it's just not.
What about the state land? I heard that in the Hunter podcast. I listened to the rebuttal. Like, there's state land 3 miles from there or something to that
it's
extent.
like 3.5 miles from there.
Yeah, like that's not a possibility either in your mind.
What do you mean?
They were saying the Hunter.
They were
guys
saying
like,
if they would have shot him, that they would have
Right.
took him there,
right,
and staged the scene.
Yeah, or it could have been shot from there.
But if
Like-
you were gonna do that, that wouldn't make much sense either, because you got to think. I've been on state before. You guys have been on state before. That's not a very big piece of state property. I guarantee you, me and Gabe could walk back there tomorrow, and we will find tree stands 30 yards apart from each other. Like,
I have
people,
a video of a guy hunting 30 yards from the road. I can just vouch on this. I'll send it to you after this, Christian. There's literally
So
a guy in orange 30 yards up the road hunting.
if they were criminals and they did that, there's some dumbass criminals that just don't make sense. There's just too much. It just don't make sense. But I don't know. I just think there would be pictures that would prove me being guilty if what they say is true. Whether it be from Lucas, whether it be from Larry's house cameras, whether it be from the cemetery cameras, church cameras, business cameras. Like, you're telling me you don't have anything like that, but you have 2 knives and a stick.
So let's back out and say Rick Johnson from Clinton County kills a 244-inch buck with his crossbow off the road, and Smoking Gun Location Services know exactly where this guy did it. He obviously poached this deer. It's about as disrespectful as a thing as you can do to an animal, especially a deer that's evaded people that long or has grown a rack like that. It's so world class and such an anomaly.
Dude,
What
it's
is-
like
if-
a Sasquatch?
Yeah,
It's like
if someone was to do that, what do you think they deserve? What do you think is a good punishment for someone if they were to do that?
Jail time, man. You want me to
think
be
so?
honest with you? Jail time, yeah.
They should go to jail.
I don't even think, man, yeah, you can fine them, and yeah, you should fine them, but there's just ways to avoid that. Like, what if they never pay the money back? What if they don't have the means to pay the money back?
Well, I think the jail time, to a sense, would kind of be you lose your hunting privileges for a certain amount of time or indefinitely.
Yep.
And I mean, I think that's kind of where they go with it. But I don't know.
It
That'd be a tough
depends
one.
on the severity of it.
I think in this case, it's about as severe as you can basically go. I mean,
It's as
If
rare
you
of an
don't
animal
get-
that exists.
100%.
There's people that have been caught shooting 50 different deer. I mean, confirmed, poached, shot off the side of the road with guns, get their hunting rights taken for 2 years.
See, that's crazy.
Well, let's be realistic. If someone goes and shoots a forkhorn and they get caught, or let's say they don't get caught, nobody's coming to look for them. Nobody
No.
gives a damn.
No, actually, to touch on that, Christian, real quick, there's a Clinton County cop here. He shot, I think it was a 10-point, and it was probably 130 inches. The landowners beside them seen him. It died on their property, 400 yards onto their property. He went, took a flashlight, grabbed it, drug it back on his property, checked it in, did everything legal and everything like that. They call ODNR. I think he had to pay a ticket. Got to keep the deer and everything. By law, technically, what they're supposed to do, because if you kill this deer and it dies on the property, I don't care if you can reach over, grab its leg, and pull it onto your property. If you do not have that landowner's consent, you illegally
Transported.
the deer, yeah, or recovered it.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that to him, and because of the size of the deer. And that's my biggest thing. Like they say, it's about conservation. I'm not saying that ODNR and stuff like that don't have its place, but let's not be dumb to the sense that if this was true, how good does that make them look? And that's what they want to be. And it should be innocent until proven guilty, but they're not looking at it that way. They're trying to find every reason for me to be guilty, but not trying to find the reason not to be guilty. And I don't think that's fair to anybody in this world.
No, and I'm not the judge, the jury, or the executioner. But if someone, like, let's say there was a smoking gun, and someone shot, let's say you did shoot that buck like that, I think the severity of the punishments would be about as severe as you can get for a wildlife violation.
Yep.
Jail time,
I completely
license, all that stuff. And if, like you said, if you didn't do that, it doesn't matter one bit to you. That's water off a turtle's back. But when you look at a deer like that, they're so rare and the specimen is so awesome that it's like you have to make an example of someone who shoots a buck like that.
Yep.
It might as well be its own like category of species, and it's on like the extinction list. Like that's about, I think,
the hunter guys said
way
the
to put
perfect thing. They were like, it's like a prehistoric animal. It's like I'm looking at a deer that was around when the dinosaurs were around. I mean, 235 and 6'8", 7'8", gross typical. That is unreal.
If you see the video doesn't even look real of the deer. Like it looks like an AI generated video. It's unbelievable.
His greatest spread, so that would be from outside to outside, is like 31 and 6/8 inches.
Really?
It's literally, it's my whole arm. I
couldn't walk through the door of my house.
I can't let doors in our apartment. I can't hold him out like this and walk through.
Crazy.
Won't fit.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen those mule deer videos where the muleys are like 30 inches wide and they have to go sideways? Go up under the thing and then pull their head out again.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how it would
How
be.
big was his G2s? I have to ask that because those have to be unbelievable.
His 1G2 is actually pretty short.
Short, 13 inches.
No,
the threes were the long ones, right?
Yeah.
What was his longest ones? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm interested in.
His G3 on that side that was controversial. It was like 15 and 4/8 or 5/8, and the other side was 13 and 6/8.
That's just crazy.
And, I think he had his next ones were also over 10 inches. They were like 12 and 11. His G1, 2, I think it'd be his G4. It was like 6. Brow tines were like 6, which a lot of people don't know this. He had triple split brows.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep. Triple split brows. A little kind of like kicker. That's probably was like that long. It was almost like a drop tine. A little bit of trash around the bases. His bases.
I thought it was cool. Yeah. He like spiraled down at his tips or whatever. That was really
they hooked down.
Yeah. That was sick.
And then hooked down.
That was sick.
Unique as can be. That's the thing. Like if people did have pictures of stuff of it in these places, there's no denying. There would be no denying that.
Yeah,
sure.
There's too many characteristics that stand out.
That I'm almost like speechless about the whole situation because I don't know. Like Christian knows, I wouldn't call myself like I wouldn't wear a tinfoil hat on my head at all times, but I do believe there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on throughout, like different industries and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that the hunting industry is like that by no means, but when it comes to money, I think there are some things to be kind of brought to light about certain situations, or at least questioned, because if they're going to question somebody over a, shooting a potential world record or for sure the Ohio state record, shouldn't somewhat like it sounds kind of far-fetched, but shouldn't it be just as likely to kind of question the way they run things with whether that be with the scoring system or I guess basically wrap it up, the scoring system as a whole, which lead into like the record books and stuff like that.
Yep.
I also think too, like if it's so much about the animal and everything like that, of like if it is poaching, whatever like that, why aren't they like taking?
Why didn't they confiscate that 130-inch tinfoil?
Yeah, exactly. Why don't they put the same amount of effort into a 120-inch buck?
And that's kind of my point with the stuff that I sent you guys in the group chat, stating what some of these ODNR officers have been caught doing. Like, as big of a case as this is, Would you want O.J. Simpson investigating a murder trial? No, probably not. He wouldn't be a good candidate. Like, there's so many places and people that they could have used, and it's weird that they picked the people that they picked for. It's without a doubt the biggest deer case in Ohio history, if not the biggest one in modern social media.
Oh, for sure.
And
It will be. It is the
Yeah.
most shock I've ever seen on viscerally looking at a picture of a deer and being like, "What the is that?"
Me and
Like,
Keith talked
it's an
about it
elk.
because I told him, he's like, what do you want for this deer? And I said, the legacy, man. I want him to be remembered because that's what an animal like that deserves, without a doubt. And when this all started happening, he's like, well, he said, you're going to get what you want. He said, it's going to have a legacy. He said, but you might be like Barry Bonds and have an asterisk beside your name for the rest of your life. And like I told you, and like I've told other people that have put stuff out there in my defense, what if everyone is wrong? What if I am innocent? Then what?
Makes an ass out of you and me. For
Yeah.
assuming this.
You know?
I don't think it's fair at this point to say yes or no from the
No,
outside
yeah.
looking in.
Yeah. And that was my biggest thing, and that's what I told you. And the fact that you were man enough to talk to me when I reached out to you, to take it down and be like, okay. And my biggest point in that, and like I told the Hunter guys, what if people that are watching this stuff is on my jury? Like, oh, I've seen all about this. Like, this dude did this, and they ignore all the facts completely. They're like, guilty.
What are you saying?
That's not fair to anyone. You wouldn't want that for your kids. You wouldn't want that for anybody, your brothers, cousins, nothing like that. It's honestly not fair to me or my family, and more so my family than me. I give a shit less about me. But
Right.
if I go out in Clinton County now and I have my kids, and some dude wants to be like, oh, poaching piece of shit, the type of man I am, I'm gonna say something. I'm a loudmouth. I mean, I'm just not gonna put up with it, and that's not fair to them. They didn't choose that, and hell, I didn't even choose it. Unfortunate.
Well, man, I appreciate you telling your side of the story. Like I said, I think there's your story, DNR story, and the truth, and yours might be 99% of that. I have no idea. But
as time goes, things will become like unveiled, and the truth will arise. Hopefully it's not like a Mitch Ron Paula situation where I don't know. Let's just
Truth
leave it at that.
never is revealed. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't see that happening just for the day and age it is. But I don't know. All I can say is next time you shoot your 200 incher, the next one, I guess, be sure to just record
They
everything.
should just have a rule. If you think that deer is 180 plus, you have to legally call the DNR. They have to come out there and check it out and recover it with you. And if not, you're screwed because
You're right.
I mean, that's hindsight 2020. That's what I would have done. So
there's no telling what's going to happen. I hope it's a good outcome. More than anything, I hope that the truth is
100%.
Came out, whether that's for you, whether that's against you. And selfishly, I hope you shot the buck legally because it's an awesome deer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we'll ever see a specimen like that again. Like we said, records are meant to be broken, so I hope we do, but I don't know if we will.
Absolutely. My biggest worry, man, is I'm sure you guys have heard about this. The Murdaugh cases in South Carolina. You guys ever heard about that? No? This dude's family has been DAs, prosecutors since the 1900s. Alec Murdaugh's his name. His son got in a really bad boat wreck. He was very wealthy. Families were suing. A young girl died in this boat wreck, and they were drunk while happening. Alec Murdaugh ended up killing his son, Paul, and his wife, Maggie, and was convicted guilty of this. But before all this had happened, this man, because of his prestigious status, almost like a Robert status, but obviously they're not involved being a DA for generations on generations.
Mm-hmm.
But he was an attorney, and he had stole over $10 million from people that were getting in crashes and getting settlements and stuff like that. And he was writing checks to himself, and he'd give them a little bit of money, but be like, that's all we got. And people started catching on, and that's why he did what he did to kill his son and wife. Almost like, man, poor me. My son and my wife just got murdered. They don't know who did it. And tried to play the system until he could not play the system anymore. And if it was not for that boat crash that his son Paul got in, that he eventually ended up murdering, who's to say he doesn't die and no one even knows about all that money he stole from people. I mean, people whose family members had died. He's like, I'm here to help you. And because of his status, no one would even think, like, oh, Mr. Murdaugh is a great, outstanding citizen in a small town. He's got a good name. He's always had a good name. And that's my biggest worry, man, because with money and power, you'd be surprised what's possible in this world.
Anything.
Yeah. If OJ can get ruled innocent, yes.
I don't know. All I know is Hunter Biden's laptop was BS, and that's what I know.
I would hope it was killed legal because I want to freaking see the thing in person. That's just what I want to do.
Shit, if they got it in the courtroom, you best believe I'm going to grab a hold of that son of a bitch.
One last
I'll
time.
take a picture with it. That's honestly my biggest thing. I tell my bag, I won't sue the state of Ohio, but I want a public apology on a news station with me and with you, and I won't sue. Just that public embarrassment. Yes, it should be investigated and stuff like that, but me personally, I believe there's been wrongdoing and political pull, and there should be consequences for that just as much as if I was guilty. There should be consequences for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
I mean, I've heard you talk about it. You mentioned God many times, and I went to a service one time at my church, and they were saying for people that have cancer, people that have illness, you may not see healing on this side of earth, right? You may not see truth or justice on this side of the earth, but there will be.
Yep.
In the end, if you believe that, there will be.
100%.
So even if it's not right, you'll see it somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Maybe not now, but
Dude.
and I believe that to be true.
God's plan is always, we want to believe and mold it to what our, how you would say, outlooks on life are. Like, I want it to turn out like this, this, and this. And when things get hard, people kind of take it away from God. And right now, I'll still tell you, all the glory to God. Maybe he wants me to be a vessel and all this and to bring some stuff to light. Maybe that was the purpose of this deer. I don't claim to know, but I know I killed that deer 100% legally, and I will give the glory to God till the day I die. And I'm not your typical Christian. I do cuss. I do sin. I do a lot of things, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But I believe it's your character, your morals, how you represent yourself, how you treat other people, and stuff like that. I don't think I like going to church. I try not to cuss. I try not to say certain things. But in the end, we're all human. We all make mistakes.
Now that we had time to kind of take a little break after the podcast and like collect our thoughts, what's your whole view of the situation?
I would hate to be in CJ's shoes.
Dude, that ain't no joke.
I know
ain't no
that.
joke. That makes people not want to shoot, or at least me not want to shoot a 200 incher. Or if I did, you better have all your T's crossed and I's dotted.
I'd have my 240-inch rack tucked in the bed with me, and I'd be like, keep bringing on the hate, baby. I can turn these notifications off.
Yeah.
No,
taken away.
like we've been doing this long enough on the podcast and just on social media in general to know exactly what people are going to say. And like, we know that people are going to say, we think you guys should have been harder on him. We think you should have called him a poaching POS.
Absolutely.
We think you should have buried him in the dirt that he stands on. And I think we have a little bit of a different perspective on it. One is we're both believers, so we don't believe in treating people that way, even if someone was guilty. Do I think would I hate on somebody for being a poacher? And I think they should go to jail and be fined and have their hunting license taken away? Yeah, absolutely. Consequences. I believe in consequences, but the reality of this situation is we don't know. So we're just going to treat that as someone who we just don't know, just like we treat someone fairly that come on the podcast. We have a lot of people come on the podcast, and the reality is I have no idea if those people poached those deer. And so I'm going to treat them exactly the same as I would someone like CJ. And if he did this, good riddance. And if he didn't, like, we can still hang our head high and say we were firm and asked him good questions, but we at least treated him the way we would want to be treated.
Yeah, and you hit it perfectly. But I mean, yeah, just like we know there are going to be people that's like, oh, hey, he was a little iffy on this, kind of like the question I brought up earlier about, if you knew what you had at the time with that buck laying between the two ponds, like, and you knew what could potentially occur, how come you didn't take those precautions? But at the same time, like, I've never shot a 200-inch deer. You've never shot a 200-inch deer. There ain't no telling what this guy's thinking, in that moment. Like, I'm sure he got a little bit in awe. But with that said, like, at least for us, what you just now mentioned on, at least me, I want to like try to give people the benefit of the doubt, so like, I'm like, yeah, he answered my question. Am I really going to like say, oh, hey, you didn't know, and have him explain himself or like what he was feeling in that moment? I mean, I don't think that's necessary. And I think that kind of could go on every question that like we tried to ask him.
The first video that I made, I think, was super unfair in the way that like it was very accusatory and spoke in absolutes. And
Right.
so that's the last thing I wanted to do on the podcast. And that doesn't mean that it's like, hey, I'm going to apologize to you. I am going to apologize for the way I was, but I'm not going to treat you any less fair or treat you softly because I did something that was wrong. I'm still going to do what I think is right, which is ask you the questions that everyone wants to know. But I'm not going to be like, you're a toolbox. By the way, tell me about the property. Like, I'm not going to do it in that way. That's not any way to have a conversation. And if you ever have a conversation with something like that, I guarantee you're not going to have a 2-hour one like we just did. I think there's a way to ask somebody something and get an answer without being a toolbox, which is what we tried to do.
And you really don't need to be, especially if we don't know what's going to like the outcome of this. What was your before and after thoughts? I guess I should say that's a better question.
Beforehand, I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be convinced that this wasn't poached, because the evidence that I had heard, which is very different than I think what actually transpired, was kind of smoking gun. I'm like, there's no way. There's too many things that don't add up. You're not going to talk me out of this right now. I don't know. Like, there's things in both sides that just don't add up. You don't bring your phone. You don't take daytime pictures of it. That makes no sense to me. And then there's also stuff like the stuff he was saying with the Ohio DNR guys coming in and not taking the guy's cell phone that
they were called out
has
there for
the pictures of the buck
for complaints or allegations or something. And again, they don't want to be like, they don't want to know that he's under investigation, but still at the same time, like, take a few pictures. If I had that situation and like, let's say I get stopped or something, or I have a fender bender, and if someone takes pictures, like that's not anything out of the normal. Like, that's his job. And like, you would think someone would be able to respect that in a way. I don't know. It just doesn't add up.
And that's why I'm going to wait to see. Like, it's a total like wait and see situation. What do you think? Is it you in the same doesn't add up camp? But I don't know, yes or no.
The thing about it is I learned a lot today through the phone call he had with us, and then the pictures and all that stuff, which I'm sure you're going to overlay on the post-production side of it. But there's a lot of new information that has been absorbed in my brain, and just knowing what I know from both sides of it, it's like, this just seems like a big O. I mean, it's just a merry-go-round, honestly. It's like, hopefully it's not like, we're going to figure it out. It ain't going to be like the Mitch Paula situation, because that's where my brain goes. Is like, hey, it's up there with the top dogs, it's competing. But I just feel like in today's age, like, I don't think the people would allow that.
I don't think people are going to take that. They're going to want to know poacher or not. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll get there. If not through, I think you could get there through purely social pressure, like on people wanting to know. So I guess we'll see. Only time will tell. But I think there's a right and a wrong way to ask somebody a question, whether they're guilty or not. And I hope we did that justice today. So that's where I'd probably leave it. That we'll catch you guys in the next one. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure to subscribe.
Jesus loves you.
Bye.